Okay, this lesson is on comparing decimals. Now, in my class, I always encourage the students to write W and TH above their decimals to help remind them that this is wholes, the decimals and, this is the tens place, and this is the hundredths place. It just helps them keep their numbers straight. Okay, the very first thing that I tell students to do is make the teams even. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. In decimals, I want them to have the same amount of numbers on the side of the decimals. So in front of the decimal on this first number, I have one player. In front of the decimal on this number, I have one player. So far the teams are even. They're balanced out. Now on this side of the decimal, on the first number, I only have one player. But over here, I have two. So my teams aren't even. This one has two players. This one only has one, so I need to add a player to this side. So I always tell the students that the player will always be a 0 and they will always come at the end. So we just stick a 0 on the end. Now they can see that this is 3 and 30 hundredths and this is 3 and 3 hundredths. So 3 and 30 is more than 3 and 3, so 3 and 30 is going to be my greater decimal. Let's do another one. If I have these two numbers, first thing we do is we write W and TH above the numbers. Then we look and see if the teams are even. On this one, in front of the decimal, I have one player. On the second number, in front of the decimal, I have one player. So far my teams are even. Now behind the decimal, on the first team, I only have one player. On the second team, I have two players. So my teams aren't even. So I need to make them even by adding a 0 at the end. Now students should be able to see that this is 1 and 80, this is 1 and 80, so they are equal. Let's do one more. Okay, for this number, things are a little bit trickier. This is when whole and TH really comes in handy. Now, once they go to put whole and tenths hundredths above this number, they recognize that there's no decimal so far. So I always tell students that when a number doesn't have a decimal, it's like a sentence without a period. It will always go at the end. So they'll put that decimal at the end, and that tells them where and will be, then tenths, hundredths. So now that they've placed their decimal, they can tell how many wholes they have on each side. Well, over here, I have one player. Over here, I have 2 in front of the decimal. So my teams aren't even. So we'll put a 0 at the end to make the teams even. Now on the back side of the decimal, on this side I have 2. So on this side, I also need 2 players. Now, when there are wholes like this, I want them to kind of focus on the wholes. We know that this number has 2 wholes, and this number has 21 wholes. So even if we don't look at the decimal, they should be able to tell that 21 wholes is more than 2 wholes, so 21 is greater than 2 and 100th. Unfortunately, in 4th grade, they decided to make things as difficult as possible. So what they will probably have is something like this. 2 and 2 tenths as a fraction compared to 2 and 20 hundredths. This is very likely to be the case. So we've already worked a bit on changing fractions into decimals. So the very first thing I always want students to do is change this fraction into a decimal. And WTH will really help with that. We know that the big number are wholes. So how many wholes do I have? I have 2 wholes. Then I can put my decimal. And we say this fraction 2 tenths. So students need to think, how would I write 2 tenths? I would put a 2 in the tenths place, and since I didn't say anything about hundredths, I'm going to leave that blank. Now they bring down the decimal they already have. 2 and 20 hundredths. Now we look to see if the teams are even. In front of the decimal, I have 1 on this side and 1 on this side. So far, they are even. In front, behind the decimal on my first number, I have 1. Over here, I have 2. So my teams aren't even. I need to make them even. So I need to add the player at the end. It will always be a 0. Now they can compare 2 and 20, 2 and 20. They are equal. So actually 2 and 2 tenths and 2 and 20 hundredths are the same amount. Now I know the steps seem taxing, but it really pays off in the long run. Let's show you one more. if I have 3 and 9 hundredths compared to 3 and 9 tenths. Okay, very first thing I want students to do is change this fraction to a decimal. Whole and tenths hundredths. They should know that this is 3 wholes, so under the W I put 3, and is my decimal, and now I have 9 hundredths. This is where TH really comes in handy. They find the H for hundredths, and they put a 9 under the H for hundredths, 9 hundredths. Now under my tenths place, they'll need to fill in a 0. Then they can bring down the decimal they already have, W and TH, and now they need to look and see if the teams are even. Well, in front of the decimal, on each side I have 1 player, so far the teams are even. Now on the first number I have 1, 2 players, so on my second number I need 1, 2 players. So I add the 0 to the end to make the teams even, and then I can compare. 3 and 9, 3 and 90. If they want to think money, if that helps them, that's fine. $3.09 or $3.90, which one's bigger? $3.90 or 3 and 90 hundredths. Hope this helps. Thanks.